All right. So, I think I've had a little mini revelation or an evolution, kind of going back to when Hythloday was saying that the idea of just sharing opinions isn't so great. It's better if you're like evangelizing or proselytizing. And I've been trying to, I'm not planning on changing my mind to that view, but expand, like, how could that even be the point of view? How could that just not be a rhetoric? Because it sounds just like something or at the time, somebody would just say. And it doesn't really matter exactly if he was just saying it or there's something behind it or what, right? But I assume that he isn't just wasting my time with some made up words. So it's like, okay, somebody could believe that. He might change his mind, for example, I'm saying. I'm not saying he believes, the same thing now, but like, just how is that really even, thing? To me, I just assume the conversation a different way. And I was realizing it's related to how to do this kind of discussion, you have to have a thick skin. But does that mean that you should have to have a thick skin? I would rather people be blunt with me. I'm always trying to get people to be honest with their opinion. I find people coy and hide it. So, to me, it's like, okay, well, if you're honest and you're willing to be blunt, then maybe that's why it's inevitable that we have this crazy way of the conversation itself as such falls apart. So with that in mind, I was also thinking about this political violence thing and the fact that I don't really like to repeat myself a lot. I end up repeating myself, but like if I gave my opinion on antinatalism, I'm not going to have like this go over and over and over it, right? It's kind of like I do end up coming back to things, and then over the years I thought, well, I should, that's why I was putting up stickers, the thorium and stuff, because I'm not going to make a video about Thorium Thursday, because I thought of it as a conversation. And yet there's something to be said for this idea that, anyway, that's not what this video is supposed to all be about. But it's really about, I'm just going to tell you what I think about the political situation in terms of political violence. And as you recall, some of you recall, I had been saying that what I thought would be dangerous about Trump was the political unrest, right? Meaning things get crazy, the whole civil war of words or culture or, political violence, that these things would be inflamed by this kind of president. I also think, he's violating emoluments, but I had said again from the start, it's probably not going to out-rob us compared to like going to war and getting no-bid contracts to your former company that you have stocks and stuff in. And the Bush administration had violated emoluments as well. So, and I thought there should be impeachment and prosecution for that. And I think that's true of Democrats. So the point is, though, what's the big difference? Why be so, I criticized Obama, but why be so upset about Trump and stuff? I think it's the nature of the beast that he is a kind of a con man that thrives on creating division, forcing people to choose sides, and then on a national level, this is a really dangerous thing. Plus, a lot of his policies continue to go in this right-wing direction, as do many of the traditional, Democratic Party positions as well. So, violence is just wrong in general, and everybody, and an interesting question is, I don't want Antifa to be violent, and I don't want the right-wingers to be violent. Now, the right-wingers have a lot more dead bodies in the United States so far. So I don't like the both-siderism of ignoring one or looking at the right-wing violence as that's an individual act. and then some leftist does something violent, that was card-carrying Antifa. Okay, they're violent people. And my view is, it could be really dangerous when the violent people all are in the one side. There's just one gang, If you're going to pick a violent war, it has to be the other side of the war. I don't want you just to, bowl through, right? On the other hand, that includes, well, not on the other hand as well, that includes if it's some sort of team I think I'm on. Because I'm not on the violent team. And when I look at history, what I see is that when a violent team takes over the country, it's not good for the philosophy of the people on their side. It's good for them particularly. And they become the same kind of warlords that you always get when things are taken over that way. And it only ever gets better slowly over time as people, the regime gets older. It has to become more like a normal government, slowly getting, democratic reforms or whatnot, right? At best. So it's not really the greatest thing to win that kind of war for most of the people on that side. Now, they might think it is because of the culture war part of it. Then, I don't know, take your pick. And, situations where Indonesia or whatever, a lot of people were like, hey, we slaughtered all the communists. Great. But they aren't the ones that, were part of they didn't actually benefit in any material way. Their philosophy wasn't furthered, right? Their version of how things should go, like, let's say idealistically, like just a non-communist, totally capitalist, that didn't happen either. It got rigged for the people, the warlords that came in, and a lot of criminals get hired and do pretty well in the warlord hierarchy. So to me, this is a way bigger problem than, there's corruptions and there's various kinds of crimes we've always had to put up with. All the presidents so far, so much so that we have to judge them on other means. Teddy Roosevelt is, I consider, a lot of people around the world consider, technically, he certainly violated the Constitution, but, war criminal, even for his time kind of a thing. You can always debate that kind of stuff. He also policed the banks, right? And he also started the ecological, he was definitely racist, but he started the parks system and whatnot, and kind of he wasn't the only one, of course, but he helped conservationism, I would say, beyond what he even just did, just for the whole idea of it, which is funny, again, because it's a hunter and stuff. But, you have to judge these things individually and through the lens of history. I don't think you have to say pretend that, like, crimes that we know are crimes today, like kidnapping and making people work for you, aka slavery, that's a crime today. I don't think you have to give someone in the past, you don't have to act like, it wasn't bad back then. No, it was bad back then too, and there were people that knew it was bad back then, but it's just more complicated, and you certainly can't say they're saints, but you also don't want to go like, and we should just put up with that, because there's a progression in these things, and I think we can expect more and more honesty, and more policing down on the ways that they con us and whatnot. And one of the ways is this siderism, and really, if people were going to choose sides, it's violence versus nonviolence. But that's not what's going on. Sargon of Akkad wants to point the finger at a left-wing violence, but perpetrate, like Kuros did, perpetrate these ridiculous apologias, And so the right wing is going to come along and ask you, do you condemn Antifa? And some people are going to be like, why, yes, I do it very, very much. But they're not condemning their side because they see it as their side. And then that other person must see Antifa as, I don't see Antifa as my side. I'm not in that club. They're anti-fascists. I'm also against fascism, but that's just the word as far as I know. I don't even know of it as a formal organization. When people show violence from the leftist side of these protest clashes, that's leftist violence. I will say that's like my side to what degree even? I mean, I just don't, well, let me put it this way. In the past, I've spent a lot of time in street protests. I protested W's Iraq War, for example. And any protest I've been involved in, nonviolence is absolutely the rule. And if you find somebody creating violence, generally think that might be an agent provocateur, like somebody there on purpose to create violence. Or like at some of the Berkeley protests I was in college, after the protest kind of happened, you have these anarchists or whatever come in and break stores, and you have, college kids duck and cover, can loot a store. It's not like the leftists that were trying to protect the free shoebox in People's Park were the ones going down there and breaking into the Gap, usually. And the violence is considered counterproductive by the community of activists that I consider myself like a part of, or historically that I have my contact in throughout my life of various kinds of political stuff. So it's sort of a changing, history of my life, threaded together as though there's a community. And, that community has the nonviolent ideas of Gandhi and like Martin Luther King, way more than any of, the violence of, like, I don't know, an armed revolutionary kind of idea. And that's why it's focused on sort of trying to mobilize large numbers of people, because one or two people will be crushed with violence. Large groups of people are harder. They're literally harder to crush, and there's a lot more danger of blowback, and it is harder to hide. It's harder to make up a successful lie about, though that happens too. So I think now someone might comment, one of these Trump apologists, like, you can't blame Trump for inciting the violence per se, because I did say why I think you can blame him, because that kind of divisive rhetoric where you force people to take sides is not good for the democratically elected leader. But it's not like he's the first one that's done that, but he just does it like to the nth degree, as we all would admit. I think even his fans kind of like that about him or whatever, stirring things up. And that's where I would concede, well, stirring things up doesn't mean you created what you stirred up. You know what I mean? It's in our culture. We've had this problem. It's been getting worse and worse my whole lifetime, which is weird because I used to think it was getting better and better. Because in the 70s it seemed like, it is getting better and better and better. And you didn't see, there's this supposed cultural revolution of everybody, all the modern SJW stuff from the 70s supposedly took over. And I thought it had more, and I thought things like torture would not be okay with the American people. But I don't ever remember some cultural, what they call it, a Maoist, the Cultural Revolution or whatever, and then these people want to call cultural Marxism, this idea that, I never saw the conservatives go away. They just had to stop being openly racist, and we didn't have we were more careful about racism in our shows and stuff. They felt stamped out, I guess, but they're still around, and anyway, it goes back a long time. And I think figuring out how to make those two sides work together, is a doable thing in general. It's hard to see how that's going to happen right now, right? So yeah, I think we should all be talking about nonviolent protests. And when I go to a protest, if I see violence, I'm going to stop it. And I think that most people do not want to have a violent conflict and want to have a reasonable one.